I devoted 50 years of my life to my family, especially my grandson Victor. I raised him after his parents abandoned him, spent my retirement savings on his education, even sold my cherished jewelry to help him buy his first house. But the moment I told him my pension had been cut due to company bankruptcy, he called me a financial liability and gave me 2 days to leave. What he didn't know was that my dear friend Harold, whom I had cared for during his final years, had left me, his entire estate, worth over $5 million. It was a crisp autumn morning when I broke the news to Victor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'd just received the letter saying that Global Financial, the company I'd worked for since I was 20, had declared bankruptcy. Their pension fund had been mismanaged for years, and now thousands of retirees like me were left with nothing. 50 years of loyal service, and my monthly income had vanished overnight. I'd been living with Victor and his wife Meredith for the past 3 years. Not by necessity. I had my own small apartment before, but because they had insisted. "Grandma." "Rose," Victor had said, "you shouldn't be alone at your age. Come live with us. We have plenty of room in the new house." The house that I had contributed $30,000 toward as a down payment. Money I'd never asked to be repaid. So I moved in, bringing my lifetime of possessions condensed into 4 suitcases. I took the smallest bedroom on the first floor, the one they'd originally designated as a home office. I tried to make myself useful, cooking meals, tending the garden, watching their daughter Lily after school. I never wanted to be a burden. That morning, I found Victor in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone while sipping his expensive imported coffee. Meredith was beside him, planning their upcoming vacation to Bali. I waited until she went upstairs, to shower before approaching him. "Victor, I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my hands trembling slightly as I clutched the bankruptcy notice. He barely looked up. "Can it wait, Grandma? I have an early meeting." "I'm afraid not, dear. It's about my pension." I slid the letter across the granite countertop. "Global Financial has gone bankrupt. They've terminated all pension payments effectively immediately." He finally put down his phone, scanning the letter with growing irritation. "This is a joke, right? How are you supposed to contribute to the household expenses?" The question struck me like a physical blow. In 3 years, I had never once been asked to contribute financially. I'd offered, of course, but Victor had always declined, saying my help around the house was contribution enough. Apparently, that had been a convenient lie. "I have some savings," I said carefully. "And I can look for part-time work. At 72, I'm still quite capable." "Part-time work?" Victor scoffed, cutting me off. "Be realistic, Grandma. No one's hiring people your age for anything that would cover what you cost us." "Cost them?" I stared at my grandson, suddenly seeing something cold and calculating in his eyes that I'd never noticed before, or perhaps had chosen not to see. "I didn't realize I was a financial consideration," I said quietly. Victor sighed dramatically, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Everything is a financial consideration. The extra utilities, the groceries, the higher water bill. We've been carrying these expenses because we thought you were contributing your pension." "My pension was going into my savings," I explained. "I offered to pay rent many times, but you always refused." "Because we thought you were saving for Lily's college fund," he snapped. "You promised to help with her education? Was that just empty talk?" I had indeed promised to help with Lily's education, and I had every intention of doing so. But the accusation in his tone made my heart ache. When had my grandson become this person? Meredith returned, hair still damp from her shower. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. Victor thrust the letter at her. "Grandma's pension is gone. Completely gone." Meredith's friendly expression instantly hardened. "All of it? But what about our Bali trip? You promised to watch Lily while we're away. I can still watch Lily, I assured her. The pension doesn't change that. But it changes everything else, Meredith said coldly. We've been planning our finances with your contribution in mind. What contribution? I asked, genuinely confused. I've never paid you anything because you always refused. Victor and Meredith exchanged a look that sent a chill through me. It was the look of people who had been caught in a lie and were quickly recalculating. We meant your future contribution, Victor said smoothly. From the college fund we thought you were building. For Lily. I took a deep breath. I do have money saved for Lily, almost $50,000. It's in a separate account and it's specifically for her education. Their expressions brightened momentarily, then fell again. But that's not for another 12 years, Meredith pointed out. What about now? How will you support yourself now? The question hung in the air, its real meaning unmistakable. What value do you have to us now? I straightened my shoulders. Dignity. Intact, despite the growing knot in my stomach. As I said, I have savings, and I can look for work. Victor let out a humorless laugh. Grandma, be serious. You're 72. Your skills are outdated, and you can barely use a smartphone. What kind of job do you think you'd get? I managed the accounting department for a major corporation for 30 years, I reminded him. My skills are not as outdated as you might think. Meredith set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. Look, Rose, we need to be practical here. This house has expenses, high expenses. The property taxes alone are outrageous. We can't afford to support another adult who isn't contributing. I understand, I said quietly. I can start looking for an apartment today. I expected them to protest, to say I had misunderstood. Instead, Victor nodded briskly. That would be best. There's a senior living facility on Oakwood Drive. I hear they have work-for-stay programs for residents who can't afford the full fee. You know, helping in the kitchen or doing light cleaning. That might be perfect for you. I stared at my grandson, this stranger wearing the face of the boy I had raised. The boy who had once climbed into my lap for comfort after nightmares. The young man who had tearfully thanked me at his college graduation for making it all possible. A work-for-stay program? I repeated slowly. You want me to scrub floors at 72 to earn my keep? Victor had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but he didn't back down. I'm just being realistic. You don't have any income now. What else are you going to do? What indeed? In that moment, I thought of Harold, my dear friend who had passed away 6 months earlier. Harold, who had changed everything, though Victor and Meredith had no idea. I met Harold Weaver 5 years ago at a community garden where I volunteered on weekends. He was a quiet man, always impeccably dressed despite being elbow-deep in soil. We bonded over heirloom tomatoes and a shared love of classical music. At 80, he was older than me but possessed a vitality that made him seem much younger. After my husband George passed away, Harold became a cherished friend. We attended symphony performances together, shared meals, and spent hours talking about books and travel. He told me about his late wife, Eleanor, his adventures as a structural engineer building bridges around the world, and his regret at never having children. What Harold never mentioned, not once in our 5 years of friendship, was that he was extraordinarily wealthy. He lived simply in a modest home, drove a 10-year-old car, and wore the same tweed jacket so often I teased him about it. When he became ill with cancer, I didn't hesitate to help care for him. 3 days a week, I'd sit with him through chemotherapy sessions, prepare meals when he was too weak to cook, and organize his medications. In his final months, when hospice nurses took over most of his physical care, I simply kept him company. I'd read to him, play chess, which he won even while heavily medicated, and listen to his increasingly philosophical reflections on life. Rose, he said to me once, about a week before he died, Do you know what I've learned is the most valuable thing in this world? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What's that, Harold? I asked, adjusting his pillow. Genuine kindness without expectation of return, he replied, his eyes clear and focused despite his failing body. It's so rare as to be almost mythical. I didn't know then that he was telling me why he'd made the decision that would change my life. After Harold passed, his attorney contacted me. To my complete shock, Harold had left me the bulk of his estate, $5.2 million in diversified investments, his house, and a collection of rare books valued at over $300,000. There was a letter with the will. Dear Rose, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've had a good life, longer and more fortunate than many. What I lacked in family, I made up for with friends like you. You showed me genuine kindness when I needed it most, never asking for anything in return. Now I want to ensure you never have to worry about your future. Use this gift wisely, and perhaps occasionally raise a glass of good bourbon in my memory. With affection, Harold. I was stunned. The attorney explained that Harold had no living relatives. His wife had died childless, and his only brother had passed years earlier. He'd considered leaving everything to charity, but in the end decided I would be a more thoughtful steward of his legacy. I kept this windfall secret, not out of any desire for deception, but because I wanted time to process such an unexpected change in circumstances. I decided to continue living simply while making careful plans for the future. The only immediate change I made was setting up the education fund for Lily. Now, sitting at Victor's kitchen table, watching my grandson dismiss 5 decades of love and sacrifice because my pension had disappeared, I silently thanked Harold for giving me options I wouldn't otherwise have had. You're right, Victor, I said calmly. I should start making different arrangements. I'll need a few days to sort things out. Victor and Meredith exchanged another look. Actually, Meredith said, her voice artificially sympathetic, we've been thinking of converting your room into a home gym. We were going to discuss it with you next month, but given the circumstances. What Meredith means, Victor interjected, is that sooner would be better than later. Maybe by the end of this week? 4 days. They were giving me 4 days to leave after 50 years of being there for them through everything. I see, I said, my voice steady despite the hurt blooming in my chest. I'll be out by Friday. Great, Meredith replied brightly, as if we'd just agreed on a dinner plan rather than my eviction. I can drop you at Oakwood on my way to yoga. I'll call them today to see about that work program. I smiled thinly. That won't be necessary. I'll make my own arrangements. Victor frowned. Grandma, be reasonable. You can't afford a regular apartment anymore. Oakwood is your best option. I appreciate your concern, I said, standing up from the table. But I've been managing my own affairs since before you were born. I'll continue to do so. I left them in the kitchen and went to my room, closing the door softly behind me. I sat on the edge of my bed, allowing myself exactly 5 minutes to feel the pain of their betrayal. Then I picked up my phone and called Harold's attorney. Jonathan? It's Rose Montgomery. I think it's time to move into Harold's house. Over the next 3 days, I quietly packed my belongings while Victor and Meredith went about their lives, barely acknowledging my impending departure. Lily was the only one who seemed upset, climbing into my lap in the evenings, asking why I had to go. Sometimes people need different things, sweetheart, I explained, stroking her hair. But I promise I'll still see you often. On Friday morning, a sleek black car arrived at the house. The driver, a professional woman in her 30s, rang the doorbell. I'm here for Mrs. Montgomery, she announced when Meredith opened the door. Meredith looked confused. Are you from Oakwood? No, ma'am. Executive car service. I'm to take Mrs. Montgomery to her new residence. Victor appeared in the hallway. What new residence? Grandma, what's going on? I emerged from my room with my final suitcase. My ride is here. Executive car service? Victor repeated slowly. Grandma, you can't afford luxuries like private cars anymore. I handed my suitcase to the driver. It's prepaid, Victor. No need to worry. But where are you going? Meredith demanded. We thought you were moving to Oakwood. I kissed Lily goodbye, hugging her tightly. I've made other arrangements. What other arrangements could you possibly have made? Victor scoffed. Did you max out your credit cards? Because we're not bailing you out if that's your plan. No. Victor. No credit cards, I replied, keeping my voice level. A dear friend left me his home when he passed. I've decided to move there. Victor's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Someone left you a house? Who? Why didn't you mention this before? I smiled faintly. You never asked about my friends, Victor. You never asked about much of my life at all. Meredith frowned, suspicious. What kind of house? Where is it? It's in Lakewood Heights, I said casually, watching their expressions change. Lakewood Heights was one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in the city, gated communities, manicured lawns, and homes that started at 7 figures. Victor let out a dismissive laugh. That's impossible. Nobody lives in Lakewood Heights unless they're a CEO or something. Harold was an engineer, I explained. He designed bridges all over the world. Quite successful, apparently. Harold? Meredith repeated. That old man you used to visit? The one with cancer? I nodded. Harold Weaver. We were close friends for 5 years. Close enough that he left you. His mansion? Victor's tone was openly incredulous now, bordering on hostile. That doesn't make any sense, Grandma. What did you do for him exactly? The implication in his question was clear, and it stung more than I cared to admit. But I refused to let him see how deeply his words cut. I was his friend, Victor. I drove him to chemotherapy. I sat with him when he was afraid. I listened when he needed to talk. Simple human kindness. Something that seems increasingly rare these days. The driver cleared her throat politely. Mrs. Montgomery, whenever you're ready. The moving truck is already at the residence. Moving truck? Victor sputtered. What are you moving? You hardly own anything. Just a few essentials, I said. Plus, I'll need to furnish the guest rooms. Guest rooms? Meredith echoed weakly. I nodded. It's a 5-bedroom home. Too much space for just me, but Harold loved that house. I've decided to honor his memory by keeping it. The reality was slowly dawning on them. Their expressions shifted from disbelief to calculation. A transformation so transparent it would have been comical under different circumstances. Victor cleared his throat, his tone suddenly solicitous. Grandma, this is wonderful news. But such a big house, you'll need help managing it. Why don't we come see it this weekend? Maybe we could even help you get settled. That's very thoughtful, Victor, I replied, but I've hired a service to help with the unpacking. I think I need some time to myself right now. It's been quite a shock, losing my pension and my home in the same week. The pointed comment wasn't lost on him. He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but recovered quickly. You know we weren't throwing you out, he protested. We were just trying to find a practical solution. A practical solution, I repeated softly. Yes, I believe the practical solution you found was for me to clean toilets at Oakwood to earn my keep. Meredith jumped in. That's not fair, Rose. We were concerned about your financial situation. We couldn't afford to support you indefinitely. Of course not, I agreed. Supporting an elderly relative would be such a burden, especially when you have that Bali vacation to think about. Lily, who had been quietly watching this exchange with wide eyes, suddenly piped up. Can I come see your new house, Grandma? I kneeled down to her level. Of course, sweetheart. Once I'm settled, you can come for a visit. Can she have her own? Room there? Lily asked excitedly. Absolutely, I promised. You can help me decorate it. Victor and Meredith exchanged alarmed glances at this exchange. I could almost see the thoughts racing through their minds. Was I planning to turn Lily against them? Would I tell her how they'd treated me? Well, I said, straightening up, I should be going. The security company is meeting me at noon to set up the new system. Security system? Victor echoed. Yes, the house has quite a few valuable items. Harold collected art, among other things. I turned to go, but Victor stepped forward, putting his hand on my arm. Grandma, wait. I think we've had a misunderstanding. We never wanted you to leave. We were just concerned about finances. I gently removed his hand. No misunderstanding, Victor. You made yourselves perfectly clear. You see me as a financial consideration, not family. That's good information to have, painful though it may be. That's not true, Meredith protested. We were just caught off guard by your pension news. We needed time to adjust our budget. And now you won't have to, I said pleasantly. I'll be fully self-sufficient in my new home. You can turn my room into that gym you've been wanting. Driver opened the car door for me. I took one last look at the house where I'd spent the last 3 years. Not in happiness, I now realized, but in a state of willful blindness. I had ignored the subtle signs of their true feelings because I hadn't wanted to face the truth. Goodbye, Victor. Meredith. I'll call about arranging visits with Lily. As the car pulled away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to see their stunned faces, their hasty recalculations. Instead, I focused on the road ahead, leading to the next chapter of my life. The ride to Lakewood Heights took 20 minutes. We passed through lush, tree-lined streets, each home more impressive than the last. Finally, we turned into a private drive marked by subtle but elegant stone pillars. Harold's house, my house now, came into view. It was a beautiful Georgian-style home, red brick with white columns, set back from the road and surrounded by magnificent oak trees. Not ostentatious, but undeniably impressive. The driver saw my expression and smiled. First time seeing it. Ma'am? Yes, I admitted. Harold always came to visit me. He said his house was too big, too empty. I never imagined. It's a lovely property, she commented as we pulled into the circular driveway. One of the originals in Lakewood Heights, I believe. A woman in a crisp suit was waiting on the front steps. She approached as I exited the car. Mrs. Montgomery? I'm Diana Reynolds, the property manager. Mr. Weaver's attorney asked me to meet you here and help you get oriented. Thank you, Diana. This is all quite new to me. She smiled warmly. We have everything prepared. The house has been thoroughly cleaned, all systems have been checked, and the kitchen is fully stocked as you requested. As we walked up the steps, I paused to take in the full magnitude of what Harold had given me, not just financial security, but a fresh start, a chance to redefine myself on my own terms. The movers had already delivered my few possessions. 4 suitcases in the grand foyer looked almost comically inadequate against the sweeping staircase and gleaming hardwood floors. Let me show you around, Diana offered, guiding me into a spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking immaculately landscaped gardens. I spent the next week settling into my new home. Diana was invaluable, introducing me to the house staff Harold had employed, a housekeeper who came 3 times weekly, a gardener, and a handyman who maintained the property. She helped me navigate the security system, the temperature controls for the wine cellar, and the irrigation system for the gardens. Each day brought new discoveries. Harold's library contained first editions of classic novels. His study housed architectural drawings of the famous bridges he'd designed. The basement included a temperature-controlled room filled with rare wines and spirits. It was like getting to know my friend all over again, this time through the things he'd cherished. I kept my promise to Lily, calling her daily despite Victor and Meredith's obvious disapproval. I could hear them in the background, sometimes instructing her what to say, sometimes trying to cut our conversations short. But Lily was persistent, always asking when she could visit my castle, as she called it. On the 8th day in my new home, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Victor standing there, a forced smile on his face. "Grandma?" "Surprise visit," he announced with artificial cheer. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see how you're settling in." In the neighborhood, indeed. Lakewood Heights wasn't the kind of place one just happened to be passing through. "Victor," I said neutrally, "this is unexpected." "May I come in?" he asked, already stepping forward. I moved aside, allowing him to enter. His eyes widened as he took in the soaring ceiling of the foyer, the crystal chandelier, the marble floors. "Wow," he breathed. "This place is incredible. Harold must have been loaded." Harold was a very successful man, I corrected. But he valued people over possessions. Victor barely seemed to hear me, too busy scanning the visible rooms with a calculating gaze. "This must be worth, what, 3, 4 million? "I haven't had it appraised," I said, though Jonathan had indeed mentioned a figure considerably higher than Victor's estimate. "Smart," Victor nodded. "No need to worry about that now. So, how are you doing here all alone? It must be quite an adjustment." "I'm adjusting well, thank you. Would you like some tea?" "Tea would be great," he agreed, following me toward the kitchen. As we passed the living room, he stopped abruptly, staring at a large painting above the fireplace. Is that a real Monet?" "Yes," I said. "Harold collected Impressionist paintings. There are several throughout the house." Victor's mouth literally fell open. "Several? Grandma, do you have any idea what those are worth?" "Harold's attorney arranged for proper insurance," I assured him. "Everything has been professionally appraised and documented. In the kitchen, a chef's dream with gleaming copper pots hanging above a massive island, I prepared tea while Victor continued to look around, visibly recalibrating his assessment of my situation. "So," he said finally, accepting the cup I offered, "I've been thinking, this place is enormous for just one person. All this upkeep, the security concerns with valuable art. It must be overwhelming." "It's actually quite manageable," I replied. "Harold had excellent staff in place." "Still," Victor pressed, "wouldn't you prefer something simpler? Maybe a nice condo in our neighborhood? You could be closer to Lily." I sipped my tea. "I am quite comfortable here, Victor. But thank you for your concern." He tried a different approach. "Have you thought about your future plans? For the house, I mean? Long term?" "Not specifically," I said, though this wasn't entirely true. I had already met with Jonathan to update my will, ensuring Lily would be well provided for, through a trustee who was decidedly not her parents. "Well," Victor continued, his tone deliberate, "Meredith and I were talking. This house would be perfect for our family. Lily could have a wing to herself. I could convert one of the outbuildings to a home office. And you, of course, would always have a place with us." There it was. Not even 2 weeks after throwing me out, he was angling for Harold's mansion. "How thoughtful," I said dryly. "Though I recall you were quite eager for me to leave your home just recently." Victor had the decency to look embarrassed. "That was a misunderstanding, Grandma. We were stressed about finances. If we'd known about your inheritance, you would have treated me differently?" I finished for him. "That's precisely the problem, Victor. My worth to you is determined by what I can provide financially." "That's not fair," he protested, but his objection sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Isn't it?" I asked quietly. "When you thought I had nothing, you suggested I scrub floors at a nursing home to earn my keep. Now that you see this house, suddenly you're concerned about my well-being?" Victor shifted uncomfortably. "People make mistakes, Grandma. We're family. Families forgive each other." "Yes, they do," I agreed. and I will forgive you and Meredith in time. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean giving you access to Harold's legacy just because you've realized its value. His expression hardened. So that's it? You're going to live here alone out of spite? Deprive Lily of a better life just to punish us? Lily is welcome. Here any time, I said. In fact, I've prepared a room especially for her visits. But this house is my home now, not a family resource to be redistributed according to your preferences. Victor's mask of concern dissolved completely. Do you even realize how selfish you sound? You're an old woman, for God's sake. What do you need all this for? You should be thinking about your family's future, not hoarding wealth for yourself. I set down my teacup with a soft click. I think it's time for you to leave, Victor. Fine, he snapped, standing up. But this isn't over. You owe this family after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I repeated, incredulous. Let's be clear about something, Victor. I raised you after your mother, my daughter, died. I put you through college. I helped you buy your first house. I cared for Lily since she was born so you and Meredith could pursue your careers. What exactly is it that you've done for me? We took you in, he shouted. You were living in that tiny apartment all alone. I was perfectly happy in that apartment, I cut in. You insisted I move in with you. And now I understand why. You wanted free childcare and housekeeping, not my company. Victor grabbed his keys from the counter. You know what? Keep your mansion. Keep your precious paintings. See if they comfort you when you're dying alone. The words were meant to wound, and they did. But not in the way he intended. They confirmed everything I'd been trying to deny about the grandson I'd raised. Goodbye, Victor, I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my heart. Please call before visiting next time. After he stormed out, I sat alone in the magnificent kitchen, surrounded by evidence of Harold's generosity and Victor's greed. For the first time since moving in, I wept, not for the home I'd lost, but for the family I'd thought I had. The next morning, Diana arrived with a concerned expression. Mrs. Montgomery, I hope you don't mind, but the security company called. Me. Someone triggered the perimeter alarm last night around 11 p.m. My heart sank. Did they see who it was? She nodded, looking uncomfortable. The cameras captured a man walking the property line, taking photos with his phone. He matches the description of your grandson. I see, I said quietly. Please have the security company save those recordings. Diana nodded. Already done, ma'am. Would you like me to contact the police? I considered this briefly, then shook my head. Not yet, but please update the security protocols. No one enters without prior clearance, not even family. Of course, Mrs. Montgomery. After Diana left, I sat in Harold's study, my study now, and contemplated my next steps. Victor's actions were becoming increasingly concerning. Taking photographs of the property suggested he might be planning something beyond simple manipulation. Perhaps he was consulting with a lawyer, looking for ways to challenge Harold's will. I called Jonathan. Rose, he greeted warmly. How are you settling in? Mostly well, I replied. But I'm having some difficulties with Victor. He visited yesterday, essentially suggested I should turn the house over to him, and then was caught by security cameras examining the property after hours. Jonathan's tone immediately became more professional. That's concerning. Do you feel unsafe? Not physically, I assured him. But I'm worried he might be looking for legal vulnerabilities. There aren't any, Jonathan said confidently. Harold's will is ironclad. He had a comprehensive psychological evaluation before finalizing it, specifically to prevent any claims of diminished capacity. All the paperwork is impeccable. That's reassuring, but I still feel I should be prepared. Victor can be persistent when he wants something. I understand, Jonathan replied. I'll prepare a cease and desist letter regarding the property trespassing. That will establish a legal record of his behavior. In the meantime, perhaps limiting communication might be wise. After our call, I sent a brief text to Victor. I'm aware you were photographing the property last night after hours. This is trespassing. Please respect my privacy and property boundaries going forward. His response came almost immediately. I have no idea what you're talking about. Paranoid much? Maybe you really do need assisted living if you're seeing intruders everywhere. I didn't bother responding to his obvious lie. Instead, I focused on establishing my new life. I joined the Lakewood Heights Community Garden, volunteered at the local library reading to children, and enrolled in a watercolor painting class I'd always wanted to try. Gradually, I began building a social circle independent of Victor and Meredith. 3 weeks after moving in, I hosted a small dinner party for my new neighbors and friends from my various activities. Among them was Bernard, a distinguished retired judge who lived 2 doors down and had been a close friend of Harold's. Harold talked about you often, Bernard told me as we sat in the garden after dinner. He was quite selective about his friendships, you know. The fact that he left you everything speaks volumes. I still can't quite believe it, I admitted. It seems so disproportionate to what I did for him. Bernard shook his head. Harold wasn't transactional that way. He valued genuine connection, above all else. After Eleanor died, he was adrift. You anchored him during his final years. Our conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Diana. Mrs. Montgomery, I'm so sorry to disturb your evening, but there's a situation at the front gate. Your grandson and his wife are demanding entry. They're quite insistent and causing a scene. Security has asked for your instructions. I sighed deeply. Tell them I'll be right there. Bernard insisted on accompanying me. Sometimes a legal perspective can be helpful in these situations, he said kindly. When we reached the gate, Victor and Meredith were arguing loudly with the security guard. Meredith's face was flushed with anger, while Victor looked oddly triumphant. Grandma, he called when he spotted me. Tell this rent-a-cop to let us in. We've brought Lily to see you, just like you wanted. My heart sank as I noticed Lily in the backseat of their car, looking confused and upset by the commotion. Victor, we had no arrangements for a visit tonight, I said calmly. I'm hosting guests. So what? Meredith snapped. We're family, not guests who need appointments. The security guard looked to me for direction. I hesitated, torn between not wanting to disappoint Lily and not wanting to reward Victor and Meredith's manipulative behavior. Bernard stepped forward. Perhaps I could suggest a compromise? Why not allow the child to visit briefly while the adults remain here to discuss proper visiting protocols for the future? Victor's eyes narrowed as he assessed Bernard. And you are? Bernard Mitchell, retired Superior Court judge and neighbor to Mrs. Montgomery, he replied pleasantly but with unmistakable authority. Victor's demeanor changed instantly. Oh, well, that sounds reasonable. Lily can visit while we chat. Right? Meredith. She looked less convinced but nodded stiffly. I instructed the guard to escort Lily to the house where my other guests could keep her company while I dealt with this situation. Once she was out of earshot, I turned to Victor. This behavior needs to stop. Unannounced visits, late-night property inspections, using Lily as a pawn. It's unacceptable. We're not using anyone as a pawn, Meredith protested. Lily genuinely wanted to see you in your castle. Then you should have called first, I replied firmly. Victor crossed his arms. Fine. We'll call next time. Can we come in now? No, I said simply. You can pick Lily up in 1 hour, and in the future, all visits will be scheduled at least 24 hours in advance. That's ridiculous, Meredith exploded. You can't dictate when we see you. Actually, she can, Bernard interjected mildly. This is private property. Access is entirely at Mrs. Montgomery's discretion. Victor glared at him. Stay out of this. It's a family matter. A family matter that involves trespassing and harassment, Bernard replied, his tone hardening slightly. As a friend of Mrs. Montgomery's, I'm concerned about these behaviors. Harassment? Victor scoffed. That's absurd. Grandma, are you seriously letting this stranger turn you against your own family? I shook my head, suddenly very tired. No. One is turning me against anyone, Victor. Your own actions are doing that quite effectively. What's that supposed to mean? Meredith demanded. It means that from the moment you learned I lost my pension, you've treated me as a burden to be disposed of. And from the moment you saw this house, you've been scheming to get your hands on. Victor's face darkened. That's not true. We're concerned about you living alone at your age. Yet you were perfectly comfortable sending me to live alone at Oakwood, working as a janitor, I pointed out. That was different, he sputtered. We couldn't afford. Exactly, I cut in. You couldn't afford me when I had no pension. Now that, I have assets. Suddenly you're concerned about my welfare. The timing is rather transparent, Victor. Bernard cleared his throat. If I may suggest, perhaps a cooling-off period might be beneficial. Mrs. Montgomery has established reasonable boundaries for future visits. I recommend respecting those boundaries. Victor looked like he wanted to argue further, but Meredith tugged at his arm. Let's just go wait in the car, she muttered. This isn't getting us anywhere. After they retreated, Bernard turned to me with a sympathetic smile. Family complications can be the most difficult. If you ever need legal advice, or just a friendly ear, my door is always open. I thanked him sincerely, grateful for his support and the calm authority he'd brought. To the confrontation. Later, when Lily came to say goodbye, she hugged me tightly. Your house is amazing, Grandma. Can I come back tomorrow? Not tomorrow, sweetheart, but soon, I promised. We'll set up a regular visiting schedule. As they drove away, Victor's face was a mask of barely contained fury, while Meredith refused to even look at me. Only Lily waved enthusiastically from the back seat, her innocent affection untainted by adult grievances. Walking back to my guests, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and relief. The family dynamics I'd long accepted were being revealed in their true light, painful though that was. But in their place, new connections were forming, healthier ones based on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation. The following week, an envelope arrived by certified mail. Inside was a formal letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands trembled slightly as I read it. Dear Mrs. Montgomery, this firm has been retained by Victor and Meredith Adams regarding the estate of Harold Weaver. Our clients have concerns about the circumstances surrounding Mr. Weaver's will and the undue influence that may have been exerted during his final illness. We request a meeting to discuss the possibility of an amicable resolution before pursuing formal legal action. The letter continued with thinly veiled accusations and a request for full transparency regarding Harold's financial records and medical history. It was essentially a threat wrapped in legal jargon. I immediately forwarded the letter to Jonathan, who called me within the hour. This is exactly the kind of nuisance claim I anticipated, he said, his voice calm but firm. It has no merit whatsoever. But they're hoping to intimidate you into a settlement. What should I do? I asked. Nothing directly. I'll respond on your behalf, making it clear that any further communication must come through me, not to you personally. I'll also remind them of the extensive documentation we have, including Harold's medical clearance and the videotaped will. Signing? There's a video? This was news to me. Yes, Harold insisted on it. He specifically mentioned that he was of sound mind and under no undue influence. He also explicitly stated that he was aware his decision might be challenged by opportunistic parties, and that he was making this recording to counter such claims. I felt a rush of gratitude for Harold's foresight. Even from beyond the grave, he was protecting me. One more thing, Jonathan added. I recommend you limit all communication with Victor and Meredith to writing, email, or text, so you have a record. If they call, let it go to voicemail. We need to document everything. Over the next month, Victor and Meredith escalated their campaign. They sent more legal letters, each more aggressive than the last. They attempted to contact Harold's former doctors, seeking evidence of cognitive decline. They even reached out to distant relatives of Harold's late wife, trying to build a coalition of potential challengers to the will. All their efforts were methodically countered by Jonathan, whose responses became increasingly stern as their tactics grew more desperate. Meanwhile, I continued building my new life, refusing to be consumed by their negativity. I enrolled in an advanced watercolor class, joined the board of the community garden, and began mentoring young girls at a local after-school program. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my years living with Victor, and I made new ones among my neighbors and fellow volunteers. The one heartache that remained was Lily. Victor and Meredith had drastically reduced her visits, allowing her to see me only once a month under their strict supervision. During these visits, they never left us alone together, clearly afraid. I might reveal the truth about their behavior or, worse from their perspective, details about my financial situation. Despite their presence, these visits were precious to me. Lily and I would bake cookies, explore the garden, or paint together in the sunroom. She was flourishing in school and had inherited my love of reading, often bringing books for us to discuss. 4 months after moving into Harold's house, I received an unexpected visitor. Diana showed a woman into my study one afternoon, a strikingly familiar-looking woman in her mid-40s, professionally dressed and clearly nervous. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm Dr. Julia Adams, Victor's sister." I stared at her in shock. Victor had told me his younger sister died in a car accident shortly after finishing medical school. According to him, they'd had a falling out, and he deeply regretted not reconciling before her death. "Julia? But Victor said you were dead?" She smiled grimly. "Yes, he would say that. It's easier than admitting he disowned me for coming out as gay 15 years ago." I gestured for her to sit, my mind reeling. "I don't understand. He showed me obituaries, news articles about the accident." Julia shook her head. "All fabricated. Victor is surprisingly tech-savvy when it comes to creating false evidence. The car accident was real, but I survived with minor injuries. When I tried to contact him afterward, he told me never to call again. Said it would be easier for everyone if I just stayed dead." My heart broke anew at this revelation. The grandson, I thought I knew, was even more of a stranger than I'd realized. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Pure coincidence, actually. I'm a neurologist at Mercy Hospital. One of my colleagues mentioned treating Harold Weaver before he died, and how his entire estate went to his caregiver, a woman named Rose Montgomery. When she described you, I realized you must be Victor's grandmother. I did some research, confirmed it was you, and, well, here I am." "Why now, after all these years?" Julia leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Because I saw the legal notices. Victor is challenging Harold's will, claiming elder abuse and undue influence. I know my brother. This is what he does, creates narratives that cast himself as the victim while vilifying others. He did it to me, and now he's doing it to you." I listened as Julia shared her history with Victor, a pattern of manipulation, gaslighting, and outright fabrication whenever someone challenged his authority or refused his demands. She described how he had systematically isolated their parents from other family members, eventually controlling their finances and healthcare decisions. "Our parents died believing I abandoned them," she said, her voice catching. "Victor made sure of that. He intercepted my letters, blocked my calls. When I finally went to their house, he had already moved them to a facility and refused to tell me where." Her story was painfully familiar. The same tactics Victor had attempted to use. On me, isolation, manipulation, controlling access to information, he had perfected on his own sister. "I'm not here to reconcile with him," Julia clarified. "That bridge is thoroughly burned. I'm here because I can't stand by and watch him destroy another family member, and because I might be able to help. Help how? I asked. I have documentation. Years of it. Emails, recorded conversations, financial records showing how he manipulated our parents' accounts. It establishes a pattern of behavior that might be relevant to your case. And as a neurologist who specializes in cognitive impairment, I can testify about how Victor manipulates medical narratives to serve his purposes. For the first time since receiving that first legal letter, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not just because Julia might strengthen my legal position, but because her very existence challenged the foundation of lies Victor had built around himself. There's something else you should know, Julia said hesitantly. I've been following Victor's social media. He's been posting about your declining mental health and how concerned he is that you're being taken advantage of by new friends. He's laying groundwork, Rose. For what? I'm not entirely sure, but it's not good. I nodded, unsurprised but still disheartened. Jonathan, my attorney, warned me this might happen. Victor's trying to build a case for guardianship. Exactly, Julia confirmed. If he can't get Harold's estate through challenging the will, he'll try to gain control over you instead. We talked for hours, comparing stories and strategies. By the time Julia left, we had agreed to stay in touch and support each other through whatever came next. She had given me her contact information and promised to speak with Jonathan about providing evidence for our case. As I showed her to the door, Julia paused. I have a daughter, she said suddenly. Annika, she's 12. Victor doesn't know she exists, and I'd like to keep it that way. But she's your great-granddaughter. If you'd like to meet her someday, I think she'd love to know you. The revelation of this unknown great-granddaughter, another branch of family untainted by Victor's toxicity, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I'd like that very much, I said softly. The following Sunday, I invited Julia and Annika for lunch. Diana helped me prepare a special meal, and I spent the morning arranging fresh flowers from the garden throughout the house. I was nervous, a feeling I hadn't expected. Meeting a great-granddaughter I never knew existed felt momentous, a bright counterpoint to the darkness Victor had created. They arrived precisely at noon. Julia looked more relaxed than during our first meeting, dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater. Beside her stood Annika, tall for 12, with intelligent eyes that reminded me of my late daughter. Annika, this is your great-grandmother, Rose, Julia said, her hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder. Annika stepped forward, extending her hand with charming formality. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Montgomery. Please, call me Rose, or Great-Grandma if you'd like, I offered, taking her hand. I'm so happy to meet you, Annika. The initial awkwardness dissolved quickly. Annika was articulate and curious, asking thoughtful questions about my life and the house. During lunch, she told me about her passion for science and mathematics, her goal to become an aerospace engineer, and her collection of vintage astronomical charts. Mom said you like art, she mentioned as we finished dessert. I brought something to show you. She retrieved a folder from her backpack and carefully removed a set of detailed sketches. Planets, constellations, and moon phases, rendered with remarkable precision. These are beautiful, I said, genuinely impressed. You have a wonderful eye for detail. She beamed at the praise. I combine art with my astronomy studies. Mom says it helps me see patterns others might miss. As Julia and I cleared the dishes, leaving Annika to explore the library, Julia spoke in a low voice. I've been in touch with Jonathan. I'm meeting him tomorrow to provide my documentation. He seems to think it will be very helpful. Thank you, I said, touching her arm gently. Not just for the legal help, but for reaching out, for bringing Annika into my life. She smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Family should be about love and support, not manipulation and control. Victor never understood that. After they left, promising to return soon, I sat in Harold's study reflecting on the strange turns my life had taken. 6 months ago, I had been living in Victor's house, walking on eggshells, trying to earn approval from people who saw me only as a resource to be exploited. Now I was building connections based on genuine care and mutual respect. The next morning, I received a text from Meredith. "We need to talk about Lily's college fund. The money you promised her. Can we meet?" I consulted with Jonathan before responding. The education fund for Lily remains intact and will be available for her college expenses when the time comes. There's nothing to discuss. Meredith's reply was immediate. "We need access to that money now. Lily's private school tuition is due and we're short. You promised to help with her education. This qualifies." I sighed, recognizing the manipulation attempt. The fund is structured as a trust that becomes available when Lily turns 18. It cannot be accessed for current expenses. I never promised to pay for private school tuition. 20 minutes later, Victor called. I let it go to voicemail as Jonathan had advised. His message was tense, barely controlled. "Grandma, we need to discuss this education money situation in person. Meredith and I will be coming over this afternoon. We expect you to see us." I forwarded the message to Jonathan, who immediately responded, "Do not meet with them alone. I can be there at 4 p.m. Alternatively, Bernard could be present as a witness." I texted Bernard, who readily agreed to come over. Then I replied to Victor, "I can meet at 4 p.m. Jonathan will be present, as will Bernard Mitchell." Victor's response was predictably hostile. "Why do you need lawyers for a family discussion? Are you hiding something?" "We'll be there at 2. I stood firm. 4 p.m. with Jonathan and Bernard, or no meeting at all. Your choice. After a long delay, fine. 4 p.m. When they arrived, Victor and Meredith were dressed formally, as if attending a business meeting. Meredith carried a leather portfolio filled with papers. Their expressions were grim but determined. Jonathan and Bernard were already seated in the living room when Diana showed them in. I remained standing, unwilling to give them any perception of weakness. "Thank you for coming," I said politely. "Please have a seat." Victor ignored the pleasantries. "Let's cut to the chase. We need $30,000 for Lily's tuition and extracurricular activities. You promised to support her education." "I did promise to support her college education," I clarified. "And I've established a trust fund for that purpose. It will be more than sufficient to cover her undergraduate expenses when the time comes." "That doesn't help us now," Meredith interjected. "Maple Academy requires payment up front. If we don't pay by Friday, she loses her spot." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "But that's not what the education fund was established for." Victor leaned forward, his tone shifting to one of concern. "Grandma, we're worried about you. You seem confused about what you promised. First, you say you'll help with Lily's education, then you add all these conditions and restrictions. It's not like you." I recognized the strategy immediately. The implication of cognitive decline, carefully framed as concern. Julia had warned me this was coming. "I'm not confused at all, Victor. I've been very consistent. The education fund is for Lily's college expenses. That has never changed." "But you're being unreasonable," Meredith pressed. "Lily's education is happening now. She needs your support now." "What Lily needs," I said carefully, "is stability and honesty from the adults in her life. If Maple Academy is too expensive for your budget, perhaps you should consider other options." Victor's facade of concern vanished. "Like what? Public school? Are you suggesting we downgrade our daughter's education because you're hoarding your windfall?" "I'm suggesting you live within your means," I replied evenly, "just as you advised me to do when you thought I had nothing." "That was completely different," Meredith exclaimed. "We were talking about a senior living facility, not our child's future." Bernard cleared his throat. "If I may interject, it seems To me, that Mrs. Montgomery has been quite clear about the parameters of her financial support for Lily. A college trust fund is a generous provision, one that many grandparents would be proud to offer. Victor glared at him. With all due respect, Judge Mitchell, this isn't a courtroom. This is a family matter. Indeed it is, Jonathan agreed smoothly. And in family matters, clarity is essential. Mrs. Montgomery has clearly defined how she intends to support Lily's education. There is no ambiguity here. Meredith opened her portfolio and extracted a document. We anticipated this response. That's why we've prepared this. She slid the paper across the coffee table toward me. Jonathan intercepted it, scanning the contents with a practiced eye. His expression darkened. This is a petition for guardianship. Guardianship? I repeated, stunned despite Julia's warning. Victor adopted a pained expression. We didn't want it to come to this, Grandma. But you're not making rational decisions. You're isolating yourself from family, surrounding yourself with strangers, becoming paranoid and suspicious. These are all signs of cognitive decline. Signs you're manufacturing, I said, my voice steady despite my shock. There is nothing wrong with my mental capacity. That's for a court to decide, Meredith replied coolly. We have documentation of your erratic behavior, testimony from family members about your confusion and paranoia, and a psychiatric evaluation that indicates potential early-stage dementia. A psychiatric evaluation? I echoed. I haven't seen any psychiatrist. Dr. Wen evaluated you based on our detailed observations and reports, Victor explained. It's standard procedure when the subject is resistant to assessment. I looked to Jonathan, who appeared both outraged and grimly unsurprised. That's completely inappropriate, he stated flatly. No reputable psychiatrist would offer a diagnosis without examining the patient directly. Dr. Wen is highly respected, Meredith insisted. His preliminary assessment is more than sufficient to initiate proceedings. Bernard was shaking his head. I know Leo Wen. He would never engage in such unprofessional conduct. I suspect you've misrepresented his findings. The documents speak for themselves, Victor said dismissively. The point is, we're concerned about Grandma's ability to manage her affairs. We're willing to withdraw this petition if she demonstrates better judgment, starting with releasing the funds Lily needs. The blackmail was now explicit. Either I give them $30,000 or they would attempt to have me declared incompetent and seize control of everything. I met Victor's gaze steadily. No. No? Victor repeated, genuine shock crossing his face. What do you mean, no? I mean I will not be blackmailed, I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. I will not give you money under duress. I will not surrender my autonomy to appease your greed. This isn't about greed, Meredith protested. It's about Lily's education. No, I said again. It's about control. You've never forgiven me for escaping your control when I moved here. This guardianship petition is just another attempt to regain that control. Victor stood abruptly, towering over me in what I recognized as an intimidation tactic. You're making a serious mistake, Grandma. Once this guardianship process starts, it won't be easy to stop. Your fancy house and all your new friends won't be able to protect you. Jonathan rose as well, his tall frame matching Victor's. Mr. Adams, I strongly advise you to reconsider this course of action. Your petition is based on fabricated evidence and misrepresented medical opinions. Pursuing it could expose you to significant legal consequences, including charges of attempted fraud. Are you threatening me? Victor demanded. Not at all, Jonathan replied calmly. I'm merely outlining the potential consequences of filing false statements with the court. Additionally, I should inform you that Mrs. Montgomery has recently undergone a comprehensive neurological evaluation with Dr. Abernathy at Memorial Hospital. His findings, which I have in my possession, conclusively demonstrate her complete cognitive competence. This was news to me. I had indeed seen Dr. Abernathy at Jonathan's suggestion, but I hadn't yet received the formal report. Victor faltered momentarily, then rallied. One doctor's opinion doesn't settle anything. We have legitimate concerns about her judgment. Such as? Bernard prompted. Such as her suddenly cutting off family, becoming secretive about finances, making outlandish accusations against us. Meredith began listing. Establishing healthy boundaries is not evidence of cognitive decline, Bernard interrupted. Neither is maintaining privacy about personal finances. As for accusations, I've witnessed some concerning behavior myself during your previous visits. Victor turned to me, changing tactics yet again. Grandma, please, let's not make this adversarial. We're family. We should be able to work things out without lawyers and judges involved. Just help with Lily's tuition and we can forget all about this guardianship business. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost pitiful. In that moment, I felt a curious shift within myself, not anger or hurt, but a profound clarity. I saw Victor not as the grandson I'd raised and loved, but as a deeply troubled man whose behavior had consequences I could no longer shield him from. Victor, I said quietly, I will not be giving you money for Lily's tuition. I will not be intimidated by your guardianship threats. And from this moment forward, I will not engage in any conversations with you except through my attorney. You can't be serious, he sputtered. After everything I've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Victor? I asked, genuinely curious. Please, enlighten us all. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I gave you a home when you had nowhere else to go. I had my own apartment, I reminded him. You insisted I move in with you. We took care of you, Meredith interjected. Did you? In what way? I challenged. I cooked meals, cleaned the house, cared for Lily after school. You didn't take care of me. You exploited my labor. Victor's face darkened with rage. This is the thanks we get? Fine. Have it your way. We'll see you in court, and when we're done, you'll wish you'd never crossed us. Jonathan stepped forward. This meeting is over. Please leave the premises. Immediately. Or what? Victor sneered. Or I'll have security escort you out, I said simply. Your choice. For a moment I thought Victor might refuse, might escalate further, but Meredith tugged at his arm, whispering urgently. With a final glare, he allowed her to lead him toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. This isn't over, Grandma. Not by a long shot. After they left, I sank into a chair, the adrenaline draining from my body. Well, I said shakily, that could have gone better. Actually, Jonathan said, I think it went exactly as it needed to. They revealed their hand, made explicit threats, and did so in front of witnesses. From a legal perspective, that's quite valuable. Bernard nodded agreement. Their petition won't survive preliminary review, especially with Dr. Abernathy's evaluation, on record. But more importantly, you stood your ground admirably, Rose. What happens now? I asked. Now we prepare our counteroffensive, Jonathan explained. The guardianship petition is frivolous, but we need to respond comprehensively to ensure it's dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, I recommend we seek a restraining order based on their pattern of harassment and intimidation. A restraining order against my own grandson, I murmured. I never imagined it would come to this. Family disputes are often the most painful, Bernard said gently. But sometimes creating distance is the only way to protect yourself. That evening, after Jonathan and Bernard had gone, I sat alone in the garden watching the sunset. The beauty of Harold's My Property seemed at odds with the ugliness of the day's confrontation. Yet somehow, despite everything, I felt stronger than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Just checking in. How did the meeting go? I gave her a brief summary, ending with, they're proceeding with the guardianship petition. Jonathan thinks it won't stand, but it's still distressing. Her reply came quickly. I wish I could say I'm surprised. Want company tomorrow? Annika is asking about Great-Grandma Rose and her amazing library. The message brought a smile to my face. Amid the day's stress, I'd love that. Come for lunch. I'll show Annika the astronomy books I found in Harold's collection. The next morning, a courier delivered an envelope from Jonathan containing Dr. Abernathy's neurological evaluation. As expected, it confirmed my complete cognitive competence, specifically noting exceptional executive function and decision-making capacity for a person of any age. Jonathan had attached a note. Excellent results. We've filed these with the court already. First hearing on the guardianship petition scheduled for next Tuesday. No need for you to attend, preliminary matters only. I spent the morning preparing for Julia and Annika's visit, finding the astronomy books I'd mentioned and setting them out in the library. Diana helped prepare a lunch of soup and sandwiches with chocolate chip cookies, Annika's favorite, for dessert. They arrived just after noon, Annika racing ahead to give me an enthusiastic hug. Great-Grandma Rose! Mom said you found astronomy books for me. I did indeed, I confirmed, returning her hug. They're waiting in the library. As Annika dashed off to explore the books, Julia handed me a thick folder. Additional documentation for Jonathan, she explained. Financial records showing how Victor gradually took control of our parents' assets, medical records he falsified, emails where he threatened me when I tried to contest the will. It's all there. Thank you, I said, setting the folder on the hall table. Though I hope it won't be necessary. Julia's expression was somber. It will be. Victor doesn't give up when money is involved. He'll fight this all the way, using every dirty trick he knows. Then we'll be prepared, I assured her. But for today, let's focus on happier things. Annika mentioned she has a science project coming. Up? Julia smiled, visibly relaxing. Yes, something about the phases of Venus. She's been obsessed with it for weeks. As we moved toward the library to join Annika, the doorbell rang. Diana appeared from the kitchen. I'll get it, Mrs. Montgomery. A moment later, she returned looking troubled. There's a police officer at the door. He's asking to speak with you. My heart sank. What now? Had Victor escalated to making false police reports? Would you like me to handle this? Julia offered, clearly thinking along the same lines. No, but thank you. I'll see what this is about. At the door stood a young police officer, looking somewhat uncomfortable. Mrs. Rose Montgomery? He asked, consulting his notepad. Yes, that's me. I'm Officer Daniels. We received a call requesting a welfare check at this address. The caller expressed concern about your safety and well-being. I sighed, unsurprised. Let me guess. The caller was my grandson, Victor Adams? Officer Daniels checked his notes again. Yes, ma'am. He stated that you're suffering from cognitive decline and may be in danger from individuals taking advantage of your condition. I assure you, officer, I'm perfectly fine, I said. As you can see, I'm alert, oriented, and under no duress. Would you like to come in? I have guests at the moment, my granddaughter-in-law and great-granddaughter, but you're welcome to speak with me privately if needed. He hesitated briefly, then nodded. Just for a few minutes, if you don't mind. Standard procedure. I led him to the study, offering him a seat. Officer Daniels, I want to be transparent with you. My grandson is currently attempting to obtain guardianship over me against my will. We had a confrontation yesterday where I refused to give him money he demanded. This welfare check is his retaliation. The officer's expression shifted from polite professionalism to genuine concern. I see. That does provide helpful context. Additionally, I continued, I've recently undergone a comprehensive neurological evaluation that confirms my cognitive health. I retrieved Dr. Abernathy's report from the envelope on my desk and handed it to him. You're welcome to review this. Officer Daniels scanned the document, nodding slowly. This appears quite thorough, Mrs. Montgomery. May I ask if you have legal representation regarding the guardianship matter? Yes, Jonathan Weber at Weber and Associates. He's fully engaged with the situation. Good. He handed the report back to me. Based on our conversation and my observations, there's no cause for concern regarding your welfare. You're clearly of sound mind and not in any danger. I smiled gratefully. Thank you for your understanding, officer. I appreciate your thoroughness. One recommendation, if I may, he added as he stood to leave. Document this incident. If your grandson is using emergency services to harass you, that's something the court should know about. I'll do that, I promised. After showing Officer Daniels out, I returned to Julia and Annika in the library. Julia looked up anxiously. Everything okay? Victor called in a welfare check, I explained. The officer was very understanding once. I explained the situation. Julia shook her head in disgust. Classic Victor. When intimidation fails, he tries to make you look unstable to authorities. Annika glanced up from the astronomy book she was examining. Mom says Uncle Victor is a bully who never grew up, she commented matter-of-factly. I couldn't help but laugh at her candor. That's a rather apt description. Annika, Julia admonished, though she was smiling too. What? It's true, Annika insisted. Bullies use power to hurt people because they're afraid of losing control. That's Uncle Victor. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought. Annika had summarized in one sentence what had taken me decades to understand about my grandson. The rest of the afternoon passed pleasantly, with no further interruptions. Annika showed me her preliminary sketches for her Venus project, and I found myself thoroughly charmed by her enthusiasm and intelligence. She reminded me of myself at that age, curious, determined, unafraid to ask questions. After they left, I called Jonathan to report the welfare check incident. Not surprising, he said when I'd finished. It's a common tactic in these situations, but it's good that you documented it. Each of these attempts actually strengthens our case. It feels like he's escalating, I admitted. I'm concerned about what he might try next. That's a valid concern. Have you considered installing additional security measures? Perhaps cameras covering all entry points to the property? I hadn't, but the suggestion made sense. I'll look into that tomorrow. Good. And Rose? Try not to worry too much. Victor is operating from a position of weakness, not strength. Each desperate move he makes only further undermines his credibility. The next morning, I contacted a security company recommended by Bernard. By afternoon, they had installed additional cameras and upgraded the alarm system. The technician provided me with a simple app that allowed me to monitor the property from my phone and receive instant alerts of any unusual activity. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Meredith. Using a friend's phone. Need to talk privately. Important information about Victor's plans. Can you meet tomorrow? Just us. I stared at the message, suspicion immediately rising. Was this actually Meredith reaching out independently, or another of Victor's manipulation tactics? I forwarded the message to Jonathan, adding, "Feels like a trap." Thoughts? His response was immediate. Definitely do not meet privately. If legitimate, she can communicate through proper channels. I replied to the text, "Please have your attorney. Contact Jonathan Weber if you wish to communicate with me." The response came quickly. No attorneys. This is personal, not legal. Victor doesn't know I'm contacting you. I'm worried about what he's planning. Just 15 minutes, please. Again, I consulted Jonathan, who remained firm. This has all the hallmarks of a setup. They could be trying to create a scenario where you appear confused or easily manipulated. Hold your ground. I sent one final message. I will only communicate through attorneys at this point. If you have concerns about Victor's actions, I encourage you to speak with a professional about your options. There was no further response. 2 days later, Diana brought me the morning mail, which included a thick envelope from the family court. Inside was a notice that the preliminary hearing on the guardianship petition had been rescheduled due to an emergency motion filed by Victor's attorney. I immediately called Jonathan. "I was just about to call you," he said when he answered. "I've reviewed the emergency motion. Victor is claiming that you're being unduly influenced by Julia Adams." "Julia? How does he even know about her?" I asked, bewildered. "Apparently he had you under surveillance. The motion includes photographs of Julia and Annika visiting your home multiple times over the past few weeks." I felt a chill run through me. "He's been spying on me?" "It appears so. The motion claims that Julia is a previously estranged family member with a history of mental instability who is suddenly inserting herself into Mrs. Montgomery's life for financial gain. He's asking the court to issue a temporary restraining order, preventing Julia from contacting you until the guardianship matter is resolved." "That's absurd," I exclaimed. "Julia has been nothing but supportive and honest with me." "Of course it's absurd," Jonathan agreed. "But it's a typical delay tactic. He's trying to isolate you from allies while dragging out the legal proceedings. What should we do?" "We're filing our response today. I've already spoken with Julia, and she's prepared to testify about Victor's history of fabricating stories and documents. The judge isn't likely to grant a restraining order based on these unsubstantiated claims, especially given Victor's clear pattern of harassment." As upset as I was about this latest development, part of me felt oddly validated. Each desperate move Victor made only confirmed what I now understood about him. He was a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted, regardless of who he hurt in the process. That evening, as I sat in the garden watching the sunset, my phone rang. It was Bernard. "Rose," he said without preamble, "I just received a rather disturbing call from Victor." "What did he want?" I asked, immediately alert. "He tried to recruit me to his side," Bernard explained. "Started with flattery about my distinguished career, then segued into concerns about your vulnerability to unsavory influences." When I made it clear I wasn't sympathetic to his position, he became quite aggressive. "Aggressive how?" "He implied that supporting you could damage my reputation. Said he had connections with several judges on the circuit who might view my interference unfavorably." I felt a surge of indignation. "He threatened you? That's outrageous." "Indeed," Bernard agreed, his tone remaining calm. "But not unexpected, given what you and Julia have told me about him. I simply wanted you to know that he's expanding his efforts beyond direct confrontation with you." "I'm so sorry you've been dragged into this," I said sincerely. "Don't be. I chose to support you because it was the right thing to do. Victor's tactics only confirm that judgment." He paused briefly. "There is one other thing. He mentioned something about evidence regarding Harold's final days that would change everything. Does that mean anything to you?" I considered this, puzzled. "No, nothing specific. Harold's final weeks were peaceful, if sad. His doctors managed his pain well, and he was lucid until near the end." That's what I thought. Most likely another bluff, but I wanted to mention it. After thanking Bernard for the information, I called Jonathan to update him on this new development. "Threatening a former judge," Jonathan mused. "Not his smartest move. Bernard's testimony about that conversation could be quite damaging to Victor's case." "What about this evidence regarding Harold?" I asked. "Almost certainly fabricated, but we should be prepared. Did anyone else visit Harold regularly during his final weeks?" I thought about this. "The hospice nurses, of course, and Harold's attorney, your colleague James Patterson, came by several times to finalize the will. Harold's housekeeper Maria was there daily. That's about it. Harold was quite private. I'll speak with James again to ensure everything was properly documented. If Victor is planning to challenge the will on grounds of undue influence, we want to have all our bases covered." The next morning, I woke to several missed calls and urgent text messages from Julia. Victor approached Annika outside her school yesterday. Call me ASAP. My heart raced as I dialed her number. She answered immediately. What happened? I demanded. He was waiting when school let out, Julia explained, her voice tight with controlled fury. Introduced himself as her uncle, told her he was her father's brother and that they had a family legacy she should know about. Fortunately, one of her teachers noticed she was talking to a stranger and intervened. Is she all right? Shaken, but okay. I've already filed a police report and notified her school that Victor is not authorized to contact her under any circumstances. This has gone too far, I said, anger replacing my initial shock. He's now harassing a child. I agree. I've spoken with Jonathan, and he's expediting our motion for a restraining order to include Annika as well. But Rose, I'm worried. Victor is becoming increasingly erratic. There's no telling what he might do next. Her concern echoed my own growing unease. Victor's behavior was escalating from manipulation and legal harassment to something potentially more dangerous. Perhaps you and Annika should stay somewhere else for a while, I suggested. Somewhere Victor wouldn't know to look. We're ahead of you on that, Julia confirmed. We're staying with a colleague of mine for the next few days, at least until the restraining order is in place. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table feeling a strange mixture of fury and fear. Victor's willingness to approach a child, to potentially frighten or manipulate her, revealed a moral vacancy I hadn't fully grasped until now. I called Jonathan again. We need to end this, I said firmly. Not just defend against Victor's actions, but stop him completely. What are our options? Jonathan was silent for a moment, considering. There are several approaches we could take. The most immediate is pursuing restraining orders based on the pattern of harassment. Beyond that, we could file a civil suit for defamation and emotional distress, particularly given the false claims in his guardianship petition. And the guardianship petition itself? We're on solid ground there. The hearing is scheduled for next week, and I'm confident the judge will dismiss it based on the medical evidence alone. Victor's credibility is also severely compromised by his documented pattern of harassment. Is there anything else I should be doing to protect myself? Continue documenting everything. Any contact, any incidents. The security cameras were an excellent precaution. I'd also recommend informing your household staff to be vigilant about unknown visitors or unusual activity. After speaking with Jonathan, I called Diana and asked her to come to the study. I explained the situation with Victor in clear terms, including his approach to Annika. I'm telling you this because I want everyone in the household to be on alert, I concluded. No one should be admitted to the property without my explicit approval, even if they claim to be family or to represent some official capacity. Diana nodded solemnly. I'll inform the gardener and housekeeping staff immediately. Should we consider hiring security personnel? I hadn't thought of that. Do you think that's necessary? Better safe than sorry, Mrs. Montgomery. My brother-in-law runs a reputable security firm. They could provide someone to monitor the property entrance during the day, at least until this situation is resolved. Please make those arrangements, I agreed. And Diana? Thank you for your support through all of this. Of course, Mrs. Montgomery. Mr. Weaver was always good to me, and you've been just as kind. We take care of our own here. Her simple loyalty brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In the midst of Victor's betrayal, I'd found myself surrounded by people who demonstrated what genuine care looked like. That afternoon, I received an email from Jonathan with positive news. The judge had granted a temporary restraining order preventing Victor from approaching me, Julia, or Annika, or from entering my property. The order would remain in effect until the guardianship hearing the following week. For the first time in weeks, I felt I could breathe a little easier. The legal system was working as it should, providing protection against Victor's increasingly concerning behavior. That evening, I received a text from Bernard. Just heard about the restraining order. Excellent development. Would you like company? For dinner? I made too much bouillabaisse. I smiled at the thoughtful invitation. Bouillabaisse sounds perfect. Come at 7? Over dinner, Bernard and I discussed the latest developments, but also intentionally shifted to more pleasant topics. My growing interest in watercolor painting, his collection of rare botanical books, our shared love of classical music. You know, Bernard said as we finished dessert, Harold would be proud of how you're handling all of this. He valued fortitude and integrity above all else. I think about him often, I admitted, wondering what he would advise if he were here. Bernard smiled. I knew Harold for 30 years. Do you know what he would say? Stand your ground, keep your dignity, and don't let the bastards wear you down. I laughed, recognizing Harold's direct manner in the quote. That does sound like him. He chose you as his heir for a reason, Rose. He saw in you the same qualities he valued most in himself: resilience, compassion without naivety, strength without cruelty. His words comforted me, reinforcing my resolve to face whatever came next with the dignity Harold would have expected. As Bernard was leaving, he paused at the door. One more thing. I've been making some inquiries about Dr. Wen. The psychiatrist Victor claimed evaluated you. As I suspected, he's outraged that his name was used in this manner. He's never met with Victor or Meredith, and certainly never provided any assessment of your mental state. He's preparing a formal statement to that effect for the court. That's excellent news, I said. Another piece of Victor's fabrication exposed. Precisely. Sleep well, Rose. The tide is turning in your favor. The following morning, I woke to an unexpected email from Meredith. Given our previous interactions, I approached it with caution, but decided to read it before forwarding to Jonathan. Rose, I realize you probably won't believe anything I say at this point, but I need to tell you that I've left Victor. What happened with Annika was the final straw. I knew he could be manipulative and harsh, but approaching a child that way crossed a line I can't ignore. I've taken Lily to stay with my sister in Oak Ridge. I don't know what comes next, but I wanted you to know that Lily misses you terribly. She asks about you every day. I understand if you don't want any contact with me, but please don't punish Lily for her father's actions. She loves you and is innocent in all this. Meredith, I stared at the screen, conflicted. Could this be genuine or was it another trap? Meredith had always followed Victor's lead, but I'd occasionally glimpsed moments of discomfort with his more extreme behaviors. Was it possible she'd finally reached her breaking point? I forwarded the email to Jonathan with a note. What do you think? Legitimate or another manipulation? His response came within the hour. Interesting development. Could be legitimate. Women often do leave when children are endangered. Could also be a new tactic. Proceed with extreme caution. If you wish to respond, keep it brief and non-committal. Do not arrange any meetings without proper safeguards. After careful consideration, I replied to Meredith. Meredith, thank you for your message. I'm sorry to hear about this difficult situation, but I believe you're doing what's best to protect Lily, which is commendable. I miss Lily too, and would like to maintain a relationship with her when appropriate. However, given the current legal proceedings, any arrangements would need to be handled carefully and with proper oversight. For now, please tell Lily that I love her very much and think of her often. Rose, I purposely kept my response measured and brief, neither fully embracing Meredith's apparent change of heart nor rejecting it outright. Until I had more information, caution seemed the wisest approach. Later that morning, Diana informed me that the security personnel had arrived. A professional-looking man in his 40s introduced himself as Michael Torres, explaining the measures his team would implement. They would maintain a discreet presence at the property entrance, monitor the security camera feeds, and conduct regular perimeter checks. We've been briefed on Mr. Adams and have his photograph, Michael assured me. He will not gain access. to the property under any circumstances. The additional security brought peace of mind, but also a sense of sadness. How had a family dispute escalated to the point where I needed professional protection from my own grandson? Around noon, Jonathan called with unsettling news. "Victor filed another emergency motion this morning," he began. "He's now claiming that Harold wasn't of sound mind when he changed his will in your favor." "That's ridiculous," I protested. "Harold underwent a comprehensive cognitive evaluation before finalizing the will. You said yourself the documentation was impeccable." "It was and still is," Jonathan affirmed. "But Victor has produced a witness, a former hospice nurse named Raymond Diaz, who claims Harold was heavily medicated and confused during his final weeks." "That's simply not true. The hospice team was extremely careful with his medication, specifically to ensure he remained lucid." "And who is Raymond Diaz? I don't recall any nurse by that name." "Neither do I, which is suspicious in itself. I'm checking with the hospice service to verify whether he actually worked with Harold. In the meantime, I've requested an emergency hearing to address these new claims before the main guardianship hearing next week." "Could this delay the dismissal of the guardianship petition?" I asked. "Potentially, but I don't think so. The judge, assigned to your case, Judge Keller, is known for her no-nonsense approach to frivolous claims. I suspect she'll see through this rather transparent attempt to muddy the waters." After hanging up, I went to my study and retrieved the journal I'd kept during Harold's final months. I'd recorded everything: his good days and bad, the medications administered, our conversations, the visitors who came to see him. If Victor had indeed fabricated a hospice nurse, the journal would help expose that lie. As I flipped through the pages, I found no mention of anyone named Raymond Diaz. The regular hospice nurses were Maria Jimenez and Paul Hunter, with occasional visits from their supervisor, Dr. Levine. All of them had been compassionate and professional, focused on ensuring Harold's comfort while preserving his dignity and mental clarity. I took photos of the relevant journal entries and sent them to Jonathan. He responded almost immediately. "This is excellent. Contemporaneous documentation is extremely valuable. I've also heard back from the hospice service. They have no record of any Raymond Diaz working for them during that period, or ever. Victor's witness appears to be completely fabricated." This confirmation of Victor's willingness to present a completely fictional witness to the court was shocking, even given what I already knew about his character. It was one thing to twist facts or exaggerate. It was another to invent a person from whole cloth. That evening, I received another text from Meredith. "I've consulted a lawyer of my own, filing for divorce and full custody of Lily. Victor doesn't know yet. If you're willing, I'd like your support when he finds out. He respects you more than anyone, even now." I forwarded this to Jonathan, who responded, "Interesting development. Could explain her earlier message. Still, maintain caution. If she's genuinely leaving Victor, he may become even more unpredictable." I replied to Meredith, "I understand this is a difficult step. However, given the current situation, my involvement might complicate matters for you. I suggest focusing on your and Lily's safety and well-being. A professional mediator might be more helpful when telling Victor." Her response came quickly. "You're probably right. Things are tense enough already. I'll keep you updated." The following day brought another unexpected development. Diana informed me that a package had arrived by courier, addressed to me personally. Following our security protocols, Michael had examined it and determined it contained only papers, nothing suspicious. Inside the package was a handwritten letter from Victor and a stack of legal documents. The letter read, "Grandma, I know things have gotten out of hand. I never wanted it to come to this. The lawyers, the court filings, the restraining orders. This isn't how families should treat each other. I'm willing to drop everything. The guardianship petition, the challenge to Harold's will, all of it, if you'll simply agree to the enclosed settlement." It's a fair compromise that ensures Lily's future while allowing you to maintain your independence. Please consider this offer carefully before our court date. Once we're before a judge, I can't control what happens next. Victor. The attached settlement was breathtaking in its audacity. In exchange for withdrawing his legal claims, Victor wanted me to place the house in a family trust, naming him as the primary beneficiary, provide immediate payment of $100,000 for family expenses, establish a $1 million fund for Lily's education and future needs, with Victor as the trustee agree to ongoing financial support of $10,000 monthly to Victor and Meredith. The document was prepared by an attorney I hadn't seen mentioned before, suggesting Victor had either changed legal representation or created this without his original lawyer's knowledge. I immediately scanned and sent everything to Jonathan, who called within minutes. "This is unbelievable," he said, not bothering to hide his outrage. "After all the false claims, harassment, and now apparently fabricating witnesses, he expects you to hand over most of your assets to him?" "The mention of Meredith is interesting," I noted. "According to her messages, she's left him and is filing for divorce." "Which makes this even more suspicious," Jonathan agreed. "Either he doesn't know about the divorce plans, or this whole situation, Meredith's messages and this settlement offer is coordinated deception. What should I do?" "Nothing. Don't respond at all. We'll address this at the hearing. In fact, this settlement actually strengthens our case by demonstrating that his motivations are purely financial." The day before the scheduled court hearing, Jonathan came to the house to prepare me for what to expect. We sat in Harold's study, reviewing documents and discussing strategy. "Judge Keller is known for her efficiency and intolerance for games," he explained. "She'll likely begin by addressing Victor's emergency motions, then move to the substance of the guardianship petition itself." "What should I expect from Victor?" I asked. "Based on his pattern so far, I anticipate he'll present himself as the concerned grandson trying to protect you from exploitation. He'll likely reference your sudden change in behavior after Harold's death, emphasize your age, and possibly bring up your previous modest lifestyle as evidence that you're being manipulated. And our response? We'll present Dr. Abernathy's evaluation, your consistent decision-making before and after inheriting from Harold, and evidence of Victor's pattern of harassment and fabrication. We'll also have statements from Bernard, the hospice service confirming no Raymond Diaz was employed by them, and Dr. Wen's affidavit stating he never evaluated you or provided any opinion regarding your mental capacity." I nodded, feeling more confident with each point. "What about Julia? Will she need to testify?" "I've filed her affidavit, but I'd prefer to avoid having her appear in person if possible. Victor becomes particularly volatile where she's concerned, and we don't want to inflame the situation unnecessarily." Just as Jonathan was gathering his papers to leave, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Montgomery?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "This is Tricia Finch, a nurse at Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Victor Adams. You're listed as his emergency contact." My heart jumped. "What's happened?" "Mr. Adams was brought in about an hour ago after a single car accident. He's stable but sedated. We found your contact information in his wallet." "I see," I said, processing this unexpected development. "Is he seriously injured?" "Multiple contusions and a broken wrist, but nothing life-threatening. He was quite agitated when brought in. Mentioned something about a court hearing." The doctor administered a mild sedative to help him rest. I thanked her for the information and explained that Victor and I were currently estranged, with a restraining order in place. I recommended they contact Meredith instead. "That's unusual," the nurse commented. "Mr. Adams specifically asked us not to contact his wife. Said they were having problems. He requested we call you instead." After hanging up, I relayed the conversation to Jonathan, who looked immediately suspicious. The timing is extremely convenient, he noted. An accident serious enough to potentially delay tomorrow's hearing, but not so serious that it would prevent him from participating eventually. You think he might be faking? I asked, incredulous. Not necessarily faking, but possibly exaggerating or even deliberately causing a minor accident. It wouldn't be the first time someone has tried to delay legal proceedings this way. Should we verify with the hospital? Absolutely, Jonathan agreed, already dialing. After a brief conversation, he hung up, looking troubled. Memorial has no record of a Victor Adams being admitted today, and they don't have a nurse named Trisha Finch on staff. So it was completely fabricated, I said, stunned despite everything I'd learned about Victor's capacity for deception. But why? What would he gain by having me believe he's in the hospital? Jonathan's expression grew grave. It could be an attempt to get you to violate the restraining order by going to the hospital, or... He paused, considering. It could be a distraction, to focus your attention elsewhere while he does something else. A chill ran through me. Like what? I'm not sure, but I don't like it. I think we should... He was interrupted by an urgent knock. Michael entered without waiting for a response. Mrs. Montgomery, we have a situation. A woman claiming to be Meredith Adams just arrived at the gate with a child. She says it's an emergency regarding Victor. Jonathan and I exchanged alarmed glances. Is it actually Meredith? I asked. The woman matches the photograph you provided, Michael confirmed. And the child appears to be Lily. But given the circumstances and the restraining order, we didn't admit them. I hesitated, torn. If Meredith and Lily were genuinely in trouble, I couldn't simply turn them away. But the suspicious phone call moments earlier suggested this could be part of an elaborate setup. Tell her to wait at the gate, Jonathan decided. I'll go speak with her personally. Michael, please accompany me. While they were gone, I moved to the window overlooking the front drive, watching anxiously. From this distance, I could see a car parked outside the gate, and what appeared to be Meredith standing beside it, holding Lily's hand. About 10 minutes. Later, Jonathan returned looking both confused and concerned. It's definitely Meredith and Lily, he confirmed. She claims Victor has become increasingly erratic, made threats about taking care of things once and for all, and then disappeared this morning. She's afraid he might do something desperate before the hearing and came here believing he might try to confront you. Do you believe her? I asked. I'm not sure. She seems genuinely frightened, but given the hospital call deception, I'm hesitant to take anything at face value right now. What about Lily? How does she seem? Upset, confused. She keeps asking to see you. I closed my eyes. Briefly, the thought of Lily distressed tearing at my heart. We can't leave them standing at the gate, but we also can't ignore the possibility this is some kind of trap. After a moment's consideration, I decided. Let them come to the guest house. It's separate from the main house, has its own security system, and we can monitor it easily. If this is genuine, they'll be safe. If it's not, we're not giving Victor access to anything significant. Jonathan nodded. A reasonable compromise. I'll stay until they're settled, and I suggest keeping Michael or another security person stationed nearby. Meredith and Lily were escorted to the guest house, a charming cottage located about 50 yards from the main residence. Through the security cameras, I watched as they entered, Meredith appearing nervous, constantly glancing over her shoulder, while Lily simply looked tired and confused. Once they were inside, I called the guest house phone. Meredith answered immediately. Rose, thank you for letting us stay. I know how this must look, especially after everything that's happened. Meredith, I need you to be completely honest with me, I said firmly. What's really happening here? First, a fake call about Victor being in the hospital. Now you showing up claiming he's made threats. None of this makes sense. There was a pause. What hospital call? I don't know anything about that. She sounded genuinely bewildered. Someone called claiming to be a nurse, saying Victor had been in an accident. It was a lie. That wasn't me, Meredith insisted. And Victor isn't in the hospital, at least not that I know of. He was fine this morning, angry, but fine. Then, he got a call, said something about taking care of this once and for all, and left. When I saw how upset he was, I got scared for Lily and left too. Her explanation sounded plausible, but after months of manipulation and lies, I remained skeptical. Can I speak to Lily? Of course. A moment later, Lily's voice came on the line. Grandma Rose? Are you mad at us? The innocent question nearly broke my heart. No, sweetheart, not at all. I'm very happy to see you. I've missed you so much. I missed you too. Can I come to the big house? I want to show you my new book. Maybe a little later, okay? For now, you and your mom need to rest in the guest house. It's been a long day. After assuring Lily that everything would be all right, I returned the phone to Meredith. We'll stay here as long as you want, she said. I didn't know where else to go. I ended the call still uncertain about Meredith's true intentions, but confident that with security personnel in place, and both Jonathan and Michael remaining vigilant, the situation was under control for now. As evening approached, another call came in, this time from Bernard. Rose, I just received a very strange visit from Victor. He appeared at my door about an hour ago, extremely agitated, claiming you were in danger and that I needed to come with him immediately to help you. What did you tell him? I asked, alarmed that Victor was now involving Bernard in his schemes. I told him I'd just spoken with you and you were perfectly fine. He became quite insistent, claiming you were being held against your will by those people who've turned you against your family. When I refused to go with him, he accused me of being part of some conspiracy against him. Did he threaten you? Not physically, but he made some rather ominous comments about how I'd regret choosing the wrong side. I've reported the incident to the police, given the restraining order. Thank you for letting me know, I said. Meredith and Lily are actually here now, in the guest house. Meredith claims Victor made threats and disappeared, so she came here fearing he might try to confront me. Bernard was silent for a moment. That's concerning. If Victor approached me trying to lure me away from my home with false claims about your safety, while his wife and daughter are at your property, he didn't need to finish the thought. We were both thinking the same thing. Victor might be trying to separate me from my support network for some purpose. I should warn you, Bernard continued. Victor appeared to be under the influence of something. His speech was slightly slurred, his eyes unfocused. He may not be thinking clearly. After thanking Bernard again for his vigilance, I immediately called Jonathan to update him on this new development. This changes things, Jonathan said gravely. Victor's behavior is becoming increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous. I'm going to contact the police to request a patrol in your neighborhood. Tonight. He also suggested strengthening our security presence at the property, particularly around the guest house. I agreed, and Michael arranged for an additional security officer to be stationed outside overnight. As a further precaution, I decided to move from the master bedroom at the rear of the house to a guest room at the front, which offered better visibility of the approaching driveway and was closer to the security team's position. Sleep was elusive that night. I lay awake, replaying the day's events, trying to discern pattern from chaos. Was Meredith genuinely seeking refuge, or was her arrival part of Victor's plan? Was Victor truly spiraling out of control, or was his apparent instability a calculated performance designed to achieve some objective I hadn't yet identified? Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Movement detected in woods behind property. Security investigating. Please stay in your room with door locked. I complied, my heart racing as I engaged the additional deadbolt Jonathan had insisted on installing on all bedroom doors. For several tense minutes, I waited, straining to hear any unusual sounds. Finally, another text arrived. False alarm. Dear triggered motion sensor. All secure. Morning arrived with a gray drizzle that matched my mood. Despite the restless night, I rose early to prepare for the court hearing scheduled for 10 a.m. I chose my outfit carefully, a conservative navy dress that projected dignity and competence without ostentation. Jonathan arrived at 8, bringing with him a colleague, Sarah Chen, who would assist with the case. They reviewed our strategy once more while Diana served coffee in the kitchen. Any updates on Meredith and Lily? Jonathan asked. They spent a quiet night in the guest house, I reported. I spoke briefly with Meredith this morning. She's still claiming to have no knowledge of Victor's whereabouts. We should leave for the courthouse soon, Sarah suggested. Given everything that's happened, arriving early would be prudent. As we gathered our materials, a security alert sounded on my phone. The front gate camera showed a police cruiser requesting entry. Michael called from the security office to confirm they were responding to a report of a disturbance at my address. A disturbance? There's been nothing here, I said, puzzled. I'll speak with them, Jonathan offered, heading outside with Michael. Through the window, I watched as Jonathan conversed with 2 officers at the gate. Their discussion seemed intense, with Jonathan gesturing emphatically while the officers consulted something on their dashboard computer. After several minutes, the officers nodded, returned to their vehicle, and departed without entering the property. Jonathan returned looking troubled. Someone called 911 reporting a violent altercation at this address. Claimed to be a neighbor who heard screaming and what sounded like gunshots. That's absurd, I exclaimed. Nothing of the sort has happened here. Exactly. It's another false report, presumably from Victor, trying to create confusion before the hearing. Fortunately, the officers were reasonable once I explained the situation and showed them the restraining order documentation. Sarah checked her watch. We should still make it to court with time to spare, but we should leave now. As we headed toward the front door, Diana appeared suddenly from the direction of the guest house, her expression alarmed. Mrs. Montgomery. Meredith and Lily! They're gone! Gone? What do you mean? I went to bring them breakfast and the guest house was empty. The back door was standing open. Jonathan immediately alerted the security team, who confirmed that no one had exited through the front gate. A quick check of the perimeter revealed a section of hedge that appeared to have been pushed through from the inside, creating a small gap just large enough for a person to squeeze through. The camera covering this area was redirected sometime overnight, Michael reported, showing us how the device had been subtly adjusted to create a blind spot. So Meredith and Lily slipped out deliberately, Jonathan concluded. But why? And where have they gone? A cold realization washed over me. The hearing. This was all to create chaos and delay us getting to court. Jonathan quickly called the courthouse to inform Judge Keller's clerk of the situation. After a brief conversation, he turned to us with a grim expression. Victor's attorney has already filed an emergency motion for continuance, claiming medical emergency. He's there now, arguing that Victor was hospitalized overnight and unable to attend. But that's a lie, I protested. Bernard saw him just last evening. I've informed the clerk about the restraining order violations and pattern of false reports. She'll relay that to Judge Keller, but we still need to get there immediately to counter these claims in person. The drive to the courthouse was tense, with Jonathan making calls throughout to coordinate our response to Victor's latest maneuvers. Sarah briefed me on what to expect when we arrived. Judge Keller is likely to be irritated by these delay tactics, she explained. That works in our favor. Stay calm, answer only what's asked, and let the evidence speak for itself. We arrived at the courthouse with just 15 minutes to spare. As we rushed toward the elevators, a familiar voice called out behind us. Rose! Wait! I turned to see Meredith hurrying across the lobby. Alone. Where's Lily? I demanded as she approached. And what game are you playing, sneaking out of the guest house like that? Meredith looked genuinely distressed, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I'm so sorry. Victor called last night. He said he had Lily's favorite stuffed animal at our house and she was upset without it. He convinced me to bring her home just to get it, promised he wasn't even there. But when we arrived, he was waiting. He wouldn't let us leave." "Where is Lily now?" I asked, increasingly alarmed. "With my sister." Victor was ranting all night about conspiracies and how everyone had turned against him. This morning, he took a bunch of pills, I don't know what, and passed out. I grabbed Lily and drove straight to my sister's, then came here. I needed to warn you and tell the judge the truth." Jonathan regarded her skeptically. "And why should we believe this story? After everything that's happened?" Meredith pulled out her phone, showing us a video. "Because I recorded him, last night and this morning. You can hear everything he says, about faking hospital calls, filing false police reports, even bribing someone to claim they were Harold's nurse. He's completely unraveled." Jonathan took the phone, watching the video with intense concentration. After a moment, he nodded grimly. "This appears genuine. Victor is clearly visible, making explicit admissions about fabricating evidence and filing false reports. This will be extremely relevant to today's proceedings." Meredith's eyes filled with tears. "I should have left months ago. I knew he was becoming obsessive about your inheritance, but I never imagined he'd go this far. Watching him interact with Lily last night, the way he kept telling her that great-grandma Rose stole what should be ours, it was disturbing. She was confused and frightened. That's when I knew I had to document everything." As we rode the elevator to the courtroom floor, Meredith provided additional details. Victor had been drinking heavily for weeks, becoming increasingly fixated on what he called the conspiracy against him. When the guardianship petition seemed unlikely to succeed, he had begun devising more desperate schemes. He talked about breaking into your house to look for the original will, she confessed. He was convinced Harold must have left something to him specifically, that you or your lawyers must have hidden it. We arrived at the courtroom to find Victor's attorney, a sharp-featured man named Lowell, already presenting his motion for continuance to Judge Keller, a stern woman in her 60s with penetrating eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "And given my client's medical condition, we respectfully request a 30-day continuance to allow for his recovery," Lowell was saying as we entered. Judge Keller looked up as we took our seats. "Ah, Mrs. Montgomery and counsel have arrived. Mr. Weber, I understand you have information relevant to this motion for continuance." Jonathan stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have evidence that Mr. Adams' claimed medical emergency is yet another fabrication, in a pattern of deception designed to manipulate these proceedings. Those are serious allegations, Counselor," Judge Keller remarked, though her tone suggested interest rather than skepticism. "Indeed, Your Honor, and we're prepared to substantiate them fully." Jonathan gestured toward Meredith. "Mrs. Adams is present and prepared to testify regarding Mr. Adams' activities last night and this morning, including video evidence of him admitting to multiple falsehoods related to this case." Lowell jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is the first I'm hearing of any video. I haven't had an opportunity to review this alleged evidence, and Mrs. Adams has clear conflicts of interest given the pending divorce proceedings." "What divorce proceedings?" Judge Keller asked sharply. Lowell hesitated, clearly caught off guard. I was given to understand that Mrs. Adams had initiated divorce proceedings, Your Honor." "That is correct," Meredith confirmed, standing. "I filed yesterday." Judge Keller surveyed the courtroom, her expression indicating she was rapidly reassessing the situation. "Mr. Lowell, where exactly is your client at this moment?" "At Memorial Hospital, Your Honor, under sedation following a mental health episode." Meredith shook her head. "That's not true, Your Honor. Victor was at our home less than 2 hours ago. I have time-stamped video." Judge Keller's expression hardened. "Mr. Lowell, are you representing to this court that your client is currently hospitalized?" Lowell looked increasingly uncomfortable. That was my understanding based on information received from Mr. Adams early this morning, Your Honor. I see. Judge Keller turned to her clerk. Please contact Memorial Hospital and verify whether Victor Adams is currently a patient there. While the clerk made the call, Judge Keller addressed Jonathan. Mr. Weber, please outline the pattern of deception you referenced. Jonathan methodically detailed Victor's actions over the preceding months. The false claims in the guardianship petition, the fabricated hospice nurse, the manipulation of medical opinions, the violations of the restraining order, and the false reports to police and emergency services. He submitted affidavits from Bernard, Julia, Dr. Wen, and the hospice service, along with my detailed records of Victor's harassment. As he concluded, the clerk returned and whispered something to Judge Keller, whose expression grew even more severe. Mr. Lowell, Memorial Hospital has no record of a Victor Adams being admitted today or at any point this week. Do you have an explanation for this discrepancy? Lowell appeared genuinely shocked. No, Your Honor. I was explicitly told by my client that he had been admitted following a breakdown. If that's not the case, I've been misled as well. Judge Keller studied him for a moment, then nodded slightly, apparently accepting that Lowell himself had been deceived rather than participating in the deception. In light of these developments, the motion for continuance is denied, she declared, firmly. Furthermore, given the substantial evidence of Mr. Adams's attempts to manipulate these proceedings through false statements and fabricated evidence, I am prepared to rule on the guardianship petition immediately. She turned to me directly. Mrs. Montgomery, the court has reviewed your neurological evaluation, the affidavits from multiple credible witnesses, and the troubling pattern of behavior by the petitioner. The guardianship petition is dismissed with prejudice. Relief washed over me at these words. The judge continued, her tone becoming even more severe. Additionally, I am issuing a permanent restraining order prohibiting Victor Adams from approaching or contacting Mrs. Montgomery, her place of residence, or her known associates. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to filing false reports, perjury, and contempt of court. Lowell, looking increasingly despondent, attempted one final intervention. Your Honor, given my client's apparent mental state, perhaps a psychiatric evaluation would be more appropriate than criminal charges. Mr. Adams' mental state will certainly be considered by the district attorney's office, Judge Keller replied. However, the extensive planning and coordination evident in his actions suggests a level of calculation inconsistent with diminished capacity. In any case, that determination is not before this court today. She turned to Meredith. Mrs. Adams, the court appreciates your coming forward with this information. I strongly encourage you to share your evidence with the police as well, particularly given Mr. Adams' increasingly erratic behavior and the safety concerns for your daughter. I will, Your Honor, Meredith assured her. I've already arranged for an emergency custody hearing this afternoon. As we left the courtroom, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief at the dismissal of the guardianship petition, satisfaction that Victor's machinations had been exposed, but also deep sadness at the complete disintegration of my relationship with my grandson. Outside in the hallway, Meredith approached me hesitantly. Rose, I know I have no right to ask anything of you after everything that's happened, but Lily loves you so much. Is there any way you might consider maintaining a relationship with her, separate from all this ugliness with Victor? Despite my lingering wariness, I couldn't deny the genuine affection I felt for Lily. Lily is innocent in all of this, I agreed. Once things settle and appropriate legal boundaries are established, I would very much like to continue being her great-grandmother. Meredith's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That means more than you know. As she turned to leave, Jonathan touched my arm. There's one more thing we should discuss before we go. The court has thoroughly rejected Victor's claims, but he still knows where you live. Given his increasingly unstable behavior, We should consider additional security measures until he's been located by authorities. I nodded, the victory of the morning tempered by the sobering reality that Victor remained at large, angry, and potentially dangerous. Let's head back to the house, I agreed. I need to call Julia and Bernard to update them, and we should coordinate with Michael about enhancing security protocols. The rain had stopped as we exited the courthouse, the gray clouds giving way to patches of blue sky. A fitting metaphor, I thought, for the clearing of the dark cloud that had been hanging over my life these past months. The drive back to Lakewood Heights was quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The court victory felt significant but incomplete, a legal resolution without emotional closure. Victor was still unaccounted for, his mental state apparently deteriorating, and the ties of family that I had once believed unbreakable were now irreparably severed. As we turned onto my street, Jonathan's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to me with a relieved expression. That was Detective Morris. Victor has been taken into custody without incident. Police found him at your old apartment building, apparently trying to convince the current tenants that he had a right to search the premises for hidden documents. My old apartment? I was baffled. I haven't lived there in over 3 years. According to the detective, Victor was insistent that you must have hidden Harold's real will there before moving in with him. The residents called police when he refused to leave. It was both a relief to know Victor was no longer at large and deeply saddening to hear how far his delusions had progressed. Despite everything he had done, a part of me still remembered the little boy who had once looked up at me with trust and love in his eyes. When we arrived at the house, Michael met us at the door with news that police had already contacted him regarding Victor's arrest. We gathered in the kitchen where Diana prepared tea, the familiar ritual bringing comfort after the tension of the morning. "What happens now?" I asked Jonathan as I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "Victor will likely undergo a psychiatric evaluation before formal charges are filed. Given the evidence and his current state, he may be remanded to a mental health facility rather than jail, at least initially." "And Meredith and Lily?" "The emergency custody hearing should establish temporary arrangements quickly. Given the documented behavior in Victor's arrest, Meredith is likely to be granted sole custody with supervised visitation for Victor, if any." I nodded, feeling a profound weariness settle over me. The crisis appeared to be ending, but the aftermath would linger for a long time. Over the next few days, I retreated into the quiet sanctuary of my home, processing all that had happened. Bernard visited regularly, his steady presence and gentle wisdom providing much-needed perspective. Julia and Annika came for Sunday lunch, bringing light and laughter back into rooms that had felt heavy with conflict. A week after the court hearing, I received a formal letter from Meredith's new attorney. She had been granted emergency sole custody of Lily, with Victor restricted to supervised visitation pending completion of a psychiatric treatment program. The letter included a carefully crafted visitation schedule for me to spend time with Lily, Sunday afternoons twice monthly, with the possibility of extended visits during school holidays. I called Meredith to accept the arrangement, finding her voice steadier and more confident than I had ever heard it. "The divorce proceedings have started," she told me. "I'm moving back to Oak Ridge permanently to be near my family. It's where I grew up, a fresh start for Lily and me." "That sounds wise," I agreed. "How is Lily adjusting to everything?" "Better than expected. Children are remarkably resilient. She asks about you often." "I look forward to our first Sunday visit," I said sincerely. "And Meredith. I want you to know I don't hold you responsible for Victor's actions. You did the right thing in the end, coming forward with the truth." Her voice softened. "Thank you for saying that. I should have recognized the warning signs sooner. I've started therapy to understand why I stayed in that situation as long as I did." After we said goodbye, I wandered through Harold's library, my library now, running my fingers along the book spines, feeling a sense of peace gradually returning. The house no longer felt like a fortress against invasion, but a home again, filled with possibilities rather than threats. In the months that followed, life settled into new rhythms. I expanded my volunteer work at the community garden, eventually becoming its director. I continued my watercolor classes, discovering a talent I never knew I possessed. The Sunday visits with Lily became precious anchors in my calendar, our relationship deepening beyond the strained formality it had known in Victor's house. Victor himself was eventually diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, complicated by substance abuse. After 3 months in a psychiatric facility, he was released on probation with strict conditions, including continued therapy and compliance with the restraining order. He relocated to a city across the state, apparently starting over with his life as I had with mine. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still found myself wondering how things might have been different if I had recognized Victor's true nature earlier, if I had established firmer boundaries, if I had been more transparent about Harold's inheritance from the beginning. But as Bernard gently reminded me during one of our conversations in the garden, we make the best decisions we can with the information we have at the time. The rest is just life unfolding as it will. 1 year after the court hearing, I hosted a dinner party to celebrate what I had come to think of as my Independence Day. Julia and Annika were there, as were Bernard, Diana, and several friends from my various activities. Even Meredith and Lily joined us, having driven in from Oak Ridge for the occasion. As we gathered around the dining table that evening, I looked at the faces of these people who had become my chosen family. None were related to me by blood, except for Lily and, in a roundabout way, Julia and Annika. Yet in them, I had found more genuine connection and support than I had known in decades of family obligation. After dinner, as golden sunset light streamed through the windows, Bernard raised his glass. "To Rose," he said simply, "who taught us all that it's never too late to reclaim your life." The others joined in the toast, their warmth enveloping me like a gentle embrace. Lily, now 8 and growing more confident by the day, tugged at my sleeve. "Great Grandma Rose," she whispered, "are you happy now?" The question, so direct and innocent, caught me by surprise. Was I happy? I considered this carefully before answering. "Yes, Lily," I said finally. "I am happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm living truthfully now." She nodded solemnly, accepting this answer with the wisdom children sometimes possess. "Mom says you're the bravest person she knows, because you started over when you were already old," I laughed, not offended by her frank assessment of my age. "Starting over isn't just for young people," I told her. "Sometimes it takes a lifetime to figure out what you really want." Later that evening, after the guests had departed and Bernard lingered over a final cup of tea, we sat in Harold's study, a room that now felt entirely mine, filled with my books, my watercolors on the walls, my memories being made daily. "You know," Bernard observed, "Harold would be pleased with how things turned out. Not the difficulties with Victor, of course, but with how you've embraced this new chapter." "I think about Harold often," I admitted. "Sometimes I feel guilty that I've changed so much of his home." Bernard shook his head emphatically. "Harold didn't leave you a museum to preserve. He left you a future to create. The changes honor his gift rather than diminish it." After Bernard left, I sat alone in the garden, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The past year had transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, fostered new relationships built on genuine care rather than obligation, and found purpose that extended beyond familial duty. The painful severing of ties with Victor remained a tender spot in my heart, a reminder that some wounds never fully heal. Yet even this had brought unexpected growth, teaching me that sometimes the most loving choice is to walk away from those who cannot value you for who you truly are. 2 years to the day after I moved into Harold's house, I received an unexpected letter forwarded through Jonathan's office. The return address showed it was from Victor, now living in Colorado. My first instinct was to destroy it unopened, but curiosity prevailed. The letter was brief, surprisingly coherent, and devoid of the accusations and demands that had characterized our last interactions. Grandma Rose, my therapist, has encouraged me to make amends where possible as part of my recovery process. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I understand those bridges are thoroughly burned. I simply want to acknowledge the harm I caused you. My behavior was inexcusable. The greed, manipulation, and harassment were mine alone, not the result of any mental illness, though I am addressing those issues now. I violated the trust of someone who only ever showed me kindness, and for that, I am truly sorry. I've been sober for 14 months. I'm working as an accounting clerk and living modestly. I've accepted that I created my own problems through entitlement and dishonesty. I don't expect a response and will continue to respect the restraining order. I just wanted you to know that I recognize the pain I caused, and I regret it deeply. Victor, I read the letter several times, searching for hidden manipulation or veiled demands, but found none. It appeared to be what it claimed, a sincere, if belated, acknowledgement of wrongdoing without expectation of absolution. I chose not to respond. Some chapters are better left closed, even when forgiveness becomes possible. But I did place the letter in my desk drawer rather than discarding it, recognizing it as a small measure of closure. Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Bernard and I grew closer, our friendship deepening into companionship that enriched both our lives. Julia was promoted to department head at her hospital, while Annika won a prestigious science competition with a project on astronomical mapping. Meredith remarried a kind, steady man who adored Lily and respected my place in their lives. As for me, I discovered a passion for teaching watercolor to seniors at the community center, finding joy in helping others unlock creative potential they had long neglected. I traveled to places Harold had loved: Venice, Kyoto, Buenos Aires, carrying his memory with me while creating new ones of my own. On my 75th birthday, surrounded by friends in the garden Harold had planted and I had tended, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. The loss of my pension, what had seemed like catastrophe at the time, had ultimately freed me from a life of invisible servitude, opening the door to authentic relationships and genuine self-determination. Any wisdom to share on this milestone? Birthday? Julia asked as she served the cake. I smiled, considering the question carefully. Just this. It's never too late to discover your own worth. And once you do, never let anyone convince you to devalue it again. 3 years after moving into Harold's house, I decided to establish a foundation in his name. The Harold Weaver Foundation would support 2 causes close to my heart: educational opportunities for older adults returning to school, and emergency assistance for seniors facing housing insecurity. People believe transformation is only for the young, I explained to Jonathan as we finalized the paperwork. I want to challenge that assumption. Jonathan, who had become both my attorney and friend, nodded approvingly. Harold would have appreciated the symmetry, his generosity creating opportunities for others to reinvent themselves, just as you did. We allocated $2 million from my inheritance to fund the foundation's first 5 years of operation. Bernard agreed to serve as board chairman, bringing his legal expertise and compassionate insight to the mission. Julia joined as well, offering her medical perspective on the unique challenges faced by aging populations. The Foundation's first major initiative was a scholarship program for people over 50 pursuing new degrees or certifications. When applications opened, we were overwhelmed by the response. Hundreds of essays from individuals seeking second chances, delayed dreams, and fresh beginnings. Reading their stories, I recognized echoes of my own journey. the homemaker who had subordinated her ambitions to family obligations for decades, the widower attempting to rebuild a life shattered by loss, the career professional rendered obsolete by technological change, each one facing the daunting prospect of starting over when society expected them to quietly fade away. On the day we announced the first 20 scholarship recipients, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't anticipated. The inheritance that Victor had coveted so desperately was now flowing outward, creating ripples of possibility far beyond what he could have imagined. "You've transformed something that was meant to be a simple gift into a legacy," Bernard remarked as we celebrated the launch. "I've just redirected it," I corrected him. "Harold's generosity was the beginning. I'm simply extending its reach." Later, that evening, as Lily helped me gather dishes from the garden party, she asked unexpectedly, "Do you ever miss Dad?" I paused, wanting to answer honestly without burdening her with adult complexities. At 10 years old, Lily was becoming remarkably perceptive, absorbing the nuances of relationships with quiet attention. "I miss who I thought he was," I said finally, "and I miss who he might have become. But I've learned that loving someone doesn't always mean having them in your life." She considered this thoughtfully. "Mom says sometimes people we love can't love us back in a healthy way." "Your mother is very wise," I said, touched by Meredith's careful navigation of this difficult terrain. "I think I understand," Lily continued. "It's like how you had to leave the old house to find out who you really were." The insight, so simply expressed, took my breath away. "That's exactly right, sweetheart. Sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning." As the sun set over Harold's garden, now truly my garden, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with loss and betrayal, but had blossomed into something rich with purpose and connection. What Victor had never understood, what I myself had taken decades to learn, was that true wealth isn't measured in properties or bank accounts. It lies in the courage to value yourself enough to walk away from those who don't, and in the wisdom to recognize genuine care when it appears in unexpected forms. At 76, I had finally come to understand that liberation sometimes arrives, disguised as catastrophe, and that it's never too late to discover who you might become when you're no longer defined by what others need you to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.